Hello and welcome. I'm so grateful you're here tuning in with me as I show you step by step how I made these egg ornaments. Now I did use eggs for my flock as well as feathers from the chickens when they were in molt, but I do know that you can get a lot of colorful eggs at the store now, and they also sell a lot of cool feathers. So you can really make this if you have chickens or even if you don't. The first thing you're going to want to do is to remove the egg whites and the egg yolks. I did this by making 2 holes with this 1/4 of an inch drill bit, but you can use anything so long as it's about the length of the egg. It'll work great. Nails, screws, what have you. And then also some kind of dish to save that inside of eggs, because you can feed that to your chickens if you have them, or you can scramble it up yourself and eat it. The first thing you're going to want to do is to take that utensil, whatever you're using, and poke a hole in the top of the egg. Now you're going to want to make sure that it's the center of the egg, because this is where the egg is going to be hanging from the tree or whatever you're hanging it from. So it does need to be centered directly at the top of the egg and the bottom of the egg so that it is parallel to each other. Now you can do this by poking 2 individual holes like I'm doing here, one on the bottom and then flipping the egg over and poking it on the top. Or you could also take the drilling utensil and insert it into the egg after you've made your first hole, and then poke the second hole from the inside of the egg like I've done here. And the goal with this is to be able to end up with an egg that does have a parallel hole on the top and bottom. The reasoning for this is because it helps with the egg white and egg yolk removal. I just basically take my drill bit and I pull it all the way through the egg, and as it pulls it through the egg, it pulls out all of the yolk and all of the really hard stuff to get out. I mean, I read that you could just blow the egg whites and the egg yolk out, but I really wasn't on board for that, so I wanted to find a different way, and this worked really well. And whatever was left in there was able to easily come out by thoroughly rinsing that egg under warm water, and then from here I would just let it sit for 24 hours to dry. Then we begin assembly after 24 hours in dry time. You're going to need a hot glue gun, and then you're going to need an ornament hook. Now you can buy, there are so many beautiful ornament hooks out there. I decided to create my own using this floral wire. Again, that's going to be up to you with what you want to do. And then at minimum 3 paintbrushes. I will explain later why you need 3, but trust me on this, the more paintbrushes, the better. And then something to set your eggs on. Make sure it's not any kind of paper or fabric or anything, because that will probably stick to the egg as it dries. But this is a plastic watercolor tray. It's really cheap. You can find it in the craft section if you want something specific, but I mean, honestly, anything will work. Now these are called ornament caps, and these will be what you hot glue to the egg to be able to attach it to the tree. There's so many different shapes, varieties, and kinds of these. I will link these specific ones below, but just know they are everywhere, and they are beautiful, beautiful, beautiful ones if you want to pick something specific to your project. And then the feathers. So these are all from my flock, and I would recommend picking feathers that are more downy. So you can see the one I'm holding has a pretty thick quill. That makes it pretty hard to manipulate on the egg and Mod Podge on, which brings me to the next thing you're going to need. You're going to need your Mod Podge, and this is going to make the egg withstand cracking and breaking as well. So the more layers of Mod Podge, the more resistant to breakage your egg is going to be. Just a little heads up there. And then additional items you might want to consider are scissors. I have some wire cutters here simply because I'm going to be working with wire. And then also with that wire, I'm going to be wrapping it around this turkey baster so that I can create the shape I want. But again, this is just my personal preference. You guys can do whatever you want there with that ornament hook. The first thing I did was to select a feather with clean hands, because once you start working with that Mod Podge, it just all goes to stick. So I started manipulating and fanning out and cleaning any of the feathers that I was going to use before I even started to, kind of paint on the Mod Podge. And then after that comes the process of attaching that ornament cap. And like I said, you're just going to be using a little bit of hot glue to attach it, and then you're going to step back with it and make sure that it is, centered. Look at it from all angles, look at it from up top, look at it from the side, look at it from, whatever you need to do to make sure that that is centered, because that's what's going to make this ornament hang parallel and level and, look good on the tree. I also like to take the side of my hot glue gun and kind of smooth out any rough spots, take off any of the hot glue before I begin working with the Mod Podge, because that will get obviously glued onto the egg and it's going to add a little bit of unwanted texture, which is what we don't want in our ornament. So after you've done your due diligence of examining the egg, you can move on to the bottom and insert another. This is considered, I think, an ornament cap. This is not necessarily something you can hang an ornament hook from. It's just a decorative cap that you can put on the bottom of ornaments. So there's really no function to this except for that it looks pretty. It's optional for you guys. You can also, if you want to hide that hole, you can put the feather directly over the hole to hide it. I just chose to add this because I thought it was really cute and gave it a little bit of extra oomph. So if you are going to do this, just the same process goes as the top of the ornament cap. Just leveling it on there, making sure it's center, looking at it from all angles, removing any of the excess hot glue so that you're prepared and ready to put your feather on the egg. Now, I briefly touched on feather selection earlier in this video, and it's incredibly important to pick the right kind of feather. So the shaft is what that center part of the feather is called, and the more downy feathers have a thinner shaft, and they're going to be a lot better suited for this. And the shaft is different than the quill. So the quill is the very, very tip of the feather that connects to the bird. That will get cut off, so don't worry too much about that. After you've picked your feather, then you're going to want to apply a very thick layer of Mod Podge. Now, I know this looks aggressive. There's a lot of Mod Podge going on right now. You're going to need it, because what you're doing here is that Mod Podge is actually adhering the feather to the egg. And I would recommend the first couple ones you do, don't do it on an egg that you love, because you might need to practice a couple times, and the placement of the feather is so important. Very strategically, very deliberately placing that feather on the egg where you want it to be, because it doesn't give much leeway once it's on there. But you can, I'm using a little piece of wire right now from my floral wire to kind of place those feathers where I want them. I like the more windswept. I don't like it to look too perfect. That's how I decided I liked it. So practicing a couple eggs to decide how you actually like the feathers to lay is kind of important too, I think. Because once you have that feather set, you're then going to apply your Mod Podge, and this is incredibly important. You're going to apply your Mod Podge with a fresh paint brush, because even if Mod Podge is allowed to dry for a minute, it will create these kind of bumpy, dried up glue bits, and those dried up glue bits get all over your beautiful egg ornament. And so letting it dry one side at a time, I did not do that with this ornament right here, so which is why I'm presenting this as an example of what not to do. I tried to do both sides of this ornament at the exact same time, and it was a hot mess, you guys. I had not washed my hands in between each ornament too, which is another mistake I wanted to point out. That Mod Podge, like, I've worked with Mod Podge before, but never like this. For whatever reason, the Mod Podge got everywhere. And so I recommend switching out paintbrushes frequently, washing your hands in between each use, and only painting one side at a time, because as you can see here, that Mod Podge was just drying and making these bumpies all over this beautiful egg. I didn't actually end up using that egg. This egg I did use, and I love it. It is so beautiful. I have 3 coats of Mod Podge on here. The more coats you put on, the more durable this is going to be. And overall, I really was impressed at how simple it was to make these egg ornaments. You can do a lot of cool artistic things. So I am actually pulling the quill down on this feather right here to create this beautiful flowing effect, almost windswept. I really like the ability of the flexibility that you have with designing this egg. And let's say you don't want to deal with all the Mod Podge on the feather. What if you just want a feather as is? Well, you can do that too. You just have to Mod Podge the egg without any feathers to create that durability, because it does need durability. And after that, hot glue will be applied to the shaft of the feather, and then the feather will be attached to the egg, and that's all she wrote. So the reason I wanted to make these ornaments is because I wanted to be able to share something that's special with me to people and family and friends that are also special to me. It's a good way to share your love of chickens. It's a good way to commemorate a first egg laid by your favorite hen, maybe the last egg laid by your favorite hen, commemorating that hen that's passed on, or maybe you have some feathers from a rooster that was really special. There are so many good reasons to make these ornaments and so many good reasons to share them. So if you guys have done so, please share those photos to my Facebook page, and also share this with some friends who might also be chicken lovers. They might enjoy it as well. And so until the next one, we will see you guys then.